Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a high-stakes, real-life thriller of intelligence and military maneuvering. We're going to break down the facts behind a massive, completely unprecedented campaign known as Operation Clean Sweep, which took place across 2003 and 2004. We're going to look at how the rules of engagement dramatically shifted, the intense psychological warfare that unfolded behind the scenes, and the really profound strategic dilemmas that intelligence agencies face when they go up against deeply entrenched networks. To really grasp the incredibly high legal and moral stakes of this operation, just look at this quote from Israel's Attorney General. He was talking about the ultimate target of this operation, Hamas's spiritual leader Sheikh Yassin. You see, Israeli intelligence couldn't just act on a hunch or a suspicion. To get the green light for these targeted strikes, the Attorney General demanded airtight evidence connecting these top political and spiritual leaders directly to acts of terror. He was essentially treating the military authorization process like a capital murder trial. There could literally be no room for a shadow of a doubt.
So, let's jump right into Section 1, launching Operation Clean Sweep.
To understand the massive scale of this operation, we have to look at the huge strategic shift that happened under Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon back in March of 2003. Israel completely changed the game. Instead of just reacting to lower-level foot soldiers and field operatives, they shifted the crosshairs directly onto the people they identified as the supreme architects of terror. A perfect example of this is the targeting of Ibrahim al-Makadmeh. He was a senior ideological leader who literally taught dental science, but was also heavily instrumental in radicalizing youth. Israel made a firm calculation. If they wanted to stop the attacks, they had to systematically eliminate the entire upper echelon, the true brains of the operation.
Which brings us to Section 2, the missed opportunity.
Because as you might guess, this ambitious new strategy quickly hit a wall. In fact, it led to what intelligence officials now view as a disastrously missed opportunity. On September 6, 2003, through a mix of human informants on the ground and some incredibly advanced technological surveillance, Israel's elite Unit 8200 and the Shin Bet pulled off the unthinkable. They managed to track the absolute entirety of the Hamas supreme leadership. We're talking Sheikh Yassin, all the top military commanders, the political chiefs, all gathering under one single roof in Gaza for a secret meeting. It was at the home of Dr. Marwan Abu Ras, a popular cleric. For Israeli intelligence, this was the ultimate, once-in-a-lifetime operational opportunity.
But talk about an impossible choice. This perfectly illustrates the intense dilemma that was unfolding right then in the Israeli Joint War Room. On one hand, you have this massive strategic gain, the complete annihilation of the Hamas leadership in a single blow, potentially preventing countless future attacks. But on the other hand, look at the projected cost. Dropping a standard one-ton bomb on that building would cause massive structural damage to a densely populated residential block. They were estimating 15 to 20 civilian casualties, plus severe international condemnation. The military was practically begging to take the shot, arguing it was necessary, but the political leadership had to seriously weigh the optics and that devastating collateral damage.
So faced with this agonizing choice, Prime Minister Sharon went for a compromise. He authorized a smaller, 250-kilogram precision missile. The idea was to specifically target only the third floor, where the meeting was supposed to be happening, keeping civilian harm to a minimum. And the missile hit perfectly. It totally destroyed the third floor. But, well, there was a huge problem. Actually, it was a catastrophic intelligence failure. The leadership wasn't on the third floor at all. They were down on the ground floor. As the dust settled, the entire leadership, including a wheelchair-bound Sheikh Yassin, just scrambled out of the rubble completely unharmed. The strike was a total failure.
That takes us straight into Section 3, the cycle of retaliation. Right after that strike, Shin Bet director Avi Dichter warned the war room that missing this shot was going to cost Israeli lives, and man was he right. It kicked off this brutal, ticking clock cycle of retaliation. Hamas wasted absolutely no time. Just 3 days later, on September 9th, a suicide bomber attacked the Trifon army base, killing 9 soldiers who were literally just waiting for buses to go home. Then, just hours later that very same night, another bombing at Cafe Hillel in Jerusalem killed 7 civilians. Israel's response was frantic. By the very next morning, they launched a retaliatory airstrike against another Hamas co-founder, Mahmoud al-Zahar.
And this leads to one of the most surreal moments you'll ever see in modern warfare. Intelligence had intercepted Mahmoud al-Zahar's phone calls, pinpointing his exact location at his home. Apache helicopters roll in, fire missiles, and completely reduce his house to rubble. But al-Zahar, he survived without a single scratch. No way, right? Well, it turns out that at that exact moment, He was out in his garden, casually drinking a cup of coffee and giving a live phone interview to BBC Arabic. For Israel, it was just another humiliating operational failure in a string of missed high-profile targets.
Which pushes us right into Section 4, the psychological war.
With all these physical strikes failing and targets slipping away, the conflict really had to evolve. It wasn't just about missiles and drones anymore, it morphed into a deeply complex psychological war. The entire debate raging inside the Israeli security cabinet was focused squarely on Sheikh Yassin. Remember, this was an elderly spiritual figurehead confined to a wheelchair. The Shin Bet argued that he was the true engine of their terror ideology, and that taking him out was absolutely essential. But the defense minister and others posed a huge, terrifying question. Would killing an ailing cleric actually break Hamas's morale, or would it just ignite an unstoppable wave of terror and turn the entire Middle East against Israel? It was a massive geopolitical gamble.
The real tipping point in this psychological chess match came a few months later, on January 14, 2004. A 21-year-old Palestinian woman named Reem Riashi, who was a mother of 2 young kids, detonated explosives hidden on her body at the Erez crossing, killing several Israeli guards. Now, what made this so shocking was that Sheikh Yassin had previously issued strict fatwas forbidding women from participating in suicide bombings. But suddenly, he holds a press conference totally praising her act, claiming it was this new, necessary evolution in their holy war.
So how did Israel respond to that? With a brilliant, straight-out-of-a-spy movie, Mossad's psychological operation. An undercover agent, going by the codename Hunter, managed to get incredibly close to a Hamas commander. Over drinks laced with arak and truth serum, the agent uncovered a really dark secret. It turned out Reem Riashi hadn't volunteered out of some deep ideological fervor at all. She had actually been caught in an extramarital affair with this exact commander. When she was brought before Sheikh Yassin, she was basically told her only path to redemption, and the only way to avoid a huge public scandal for the organization, was to carry out this attack. It was, for all intents and purposes, a forced honor killing. Mossad immediately leaked this explosive truth to the international press, which just absolutely shattered Yassin's credibility and his public image as a righteous religious leader.
And that sets the stage for our final act, Section 5, Taking Down the Leaders.
Now, with Yassin's public image deeply damaged in the court of public opinion, and the Attorney General finally satisfied by newly intercepted phone calls proving Yassin was directly ordering attacks, the operation hit its climax. Once Israel had that legal authorization, they didn't hesitate. On March 22, 2004, Sheikh Yassin was leaving a mosque early in the morning. His bodyguards knew they were being hunted, so they tried a pretty desperate, deceptive tactic. Instead of loading him into his usual transport van, they pushed his wheelchair through the streets in these tight, unpredictable circles, hoping to confuse the aerial surveillance. But the technology was simply way too advanced. Hermann 450 drones, equipped with highly powerful infrared cameras, easily tracked his heat signature from above, and they guided an Apache helicopter in to deliver a fatal, incredibly precise strike.
The geopolitical fallout from that strike was exactly as massive as some people had feared. Sharp, immediate criticism came pouring in from literally all corners of the globe, from the UN all the way to the White House in Washington. Amidst all this massive international uproar, a severely shaken and frightened Hamas quickly convened and appointed Abdelaziz al-Rantisi to step up and take the reins as their new supreme leader.
But as we'll see, Rantisi's time at the top was incredibly short. I mean, he knew for a fact he was next on the list, so he lived in absolute secrecy. He constantly wore disguises, he never slept in the same place twice, and he completely avoided all public spaces. However, on April 17th, he made one fatal human error. He made a really brief, clandestine 30-minute visit to his home just to give his wife some money for their son's upcoming wedding. Just minutes after he left the house, an Israeli drone strike locked onto his vehicle and ended his leadership almost as soon as it had even begun.
Now let's take a look at this number right here, 168. To put this all into perspective, that number represents the staggering, sheer scale of Operation Clean Sweep. By the time Rantisi was killed, Israel had successfully carried out 168 targeted killings of operatives, commanders, and leaders within the organization. It was an absolutely unprecedented, methodical dismantling of an entire command structure.
And the cumulative effect of all these precision strikes? It was absolute. The supreme leadership was effectively decapitated. Any surviving leaders were utterly terrified. They were forced completely into the shadows. We're talking about a sudden, complete cessation of public statements, television appearances, and rallies. The entire public network they had relied on to recruit and inspire was just silenced.
By forcing the organization to spend literally all of its energy simply trying to survive the day, Operation Clean Sweep had achieved its primary objective.
So what's the big takeaway here? When we look back at the really intense history and the undeniable tactical successes of Operation Clean Sweep, we're left with a massive strategic question. Does physically eliminating the leadership actually destroy the underlying ideology? Or does a decapitation strategy like this simply force that ideology underground, forcing it to evolve, adapt, and just fight another day from the shadows? It's a profound question about the very nature of modern counterterrorism, and honestly, it's one that history is continuing to test every single day. Thank you so much for joining me on this Explainer.